I'll annotate it later, but I am comparing the polygon general method of, like, this represents one geometrical way to construct a pentagon or a pentagram. This is one geometrical way to do it. I found this method among engineering videos on the YouTube, right? So I'm comparing this, the polygon general method, which is supposedly a way in which you can construct every polygon geometrically. I encourage you to Google polygon general method of constructing a polygon. However, so far I have found it to be imperfect. Versus this construction of a pentagon or a pentagram, which is the Richman construction, which is not popular yet. It's known, and it's kind of popular among a few people, but I suspect in the future it will be much more popular. So the Richman method of constructing a polygon. I made a video, it might have even been a year ago, it could have been 6 months ago, 18 months ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I made a video not too long ago where this was the feature, and then a few days later I made a video where's my numbers? I can't remember. It was something like I made a video with this or whatever. Basically what happened was I discovered this method, like, it's not my method. I discovered this method online of a way in which to construct a polygon. And I was like, wow, that's so simple. So I did it. And then I did the algebra. And I wasn't sure at the time, like, if this was true. As it turns out, once I did my calculations, which do have to do with this page, I found out it wasn't true. Why did I know it wasn't true? Because I had done this before. The Richman method. So basically, I had to construct this pictograph in such a way that this line it's like if you're doing rational geometry on the unit circle, there's a cheat because if the unit circle is only rational and not imaginary, if you make the unit circle imaginary, as in, instead of having your, well, like a quote unquote, I'm fudging the terms, but a quote unquote rational circle has x equals 1, negative x, what, equals negative 1, y equals 1, negative y equals negative 1. Whereas if you have a imaginary, quote unquote, if we're talking about imaginary numbers, which Gauss, I think it was Gauss himself, who is more or less one of the fathers of imaginary numbers, or one of the greatest, Gauss was one of the most, I mean, he's a great uncle of imaginary numbers, said they shouldn't be called imaginary, they should be called lateral. Well, what does that mean? What does laterality mean? But anyway, in the complex, quote unquote complex unit circle, your positive x is plus 1, your negative x is minus 1, your positive y is plus I, and your negative y is negative I, right? But anyway, once we finally crunch this number, and we come up with something like this, like we know that it's not the fifth root of 1. We know it is not the fifth root of unity. But because I did the work, and this was from 10, 12, 20, 22, and I got the receipts, this is actually the fifth root of 1. Or it's related to the fifth root of 1. However, ta-da! Like, I talked about it before. I wanted to make a better video about it that spoke about it more clearly. But like, the general method for polygon construction, it's really pretty, and it's very effective, and it's very simple, and there are very few points of accumulated error. Like in engineering, there's the idea, the concept of accumulated error, where it's like you put one block on top of another block. And accumulated error is most easily understood in the form of laying bricks. If you're off by 1/8 of an inch on every layer of your bricks, by the time you get to a 3-story building, you don't have a building that goes like this, you have a building that goes like this. If you constructed it that way, that's fine, but if you meant it to be like this, you're fucked. So I kind of feel like it's interesting because imperfection, this is the best model. The more precise you are, like in perfection, in eternity, this is true. How do I know? I proved it. It took me 13 pages. I know the Richmond construction is true. I know it. On a plane. This, when I made my video, I don't know, it was a year ago, 8 months ago, 2 years ago, I can't remember how long, but I know I made a video about this and I wasn't sure. But then I proved it. And I know it's not true. It's close. The thing is, when you actually are using your compass and ruler, I know in what is it, like what are they called? Masons. Like in masonry, you know, it's the compass and the square. The compass and the square have very little to do with affine, A-F-F-I-N-E, geometry. Affine geometry is very, very powerful. Now, if you use a straight edge on a compass, it brings it all together. It's an opinion. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. What the fuck do you know about affine geometry? Well, maybe more than me, and if you do, please school me, you know, but you probably don't. But what's remarkable about this and this is that this represents planar perfection. And it's difficult. Even though it's like easy, it's sophomore, it's like 10th grade geometry. It's like if you're 15, 16, you can do it. And if you're 15 and 16, you can do this. However, there are more steps to get to perfection. This is very close to perfect, and there are less steps. So when it comes to practicality, like, if I had to make a pentagon that had 100-meter diameter, I might use this instead of this because there's less accumulated error. Because when you're using compasses and rulers to determine geometry, every time you draw a line, every time you draw a circle, there is error. Not there might be error. Every single time you draw a line or make a circle, there is error. So this might be one of the rare cases where perfection in the ideal realm, in the eternal realm, in the perfect realm, actually fails practically. Because the process with less steps is more accurate only because there are less steps. Every step we take is more or less accurate. if you were perfectly accurate, the Richman construction of a pentagon or a pentagram, that's the way to go. But the polygon general method might actually be more precise in real life. It depends on the thickness of the line we draw. It depends on where we put that point of our compass. It depends on the flexibility of our compass. Like, this is a nice page. It's just a nice page. Everything's wrong. This is another one. This was my first take. I kept it. It's important. Fail. I made a video a long time ago that had this, and I said, is this true? I figured it out. It isn't true. However, practically speaking, it might be more effective. Because even though it's off a bit from perfection, it has less steps, it's less complicated, it's easier to understand, and in many cases, it actually becomes more accurate by accident. That's crazy. Conversely, on the other side, maybe that just speaks to my own bio acumen, my biophysio, my physio acumenica, my dexterity, my precision. Years ago, I worked in a machine shop. I had various tasks in the machine shop. I worked in quality control. I worked in I can't remember what it's named. The way I remember it is the tumbler room, where it was like a rock tumbler. It's like you put machine parts, you kind of scrubbed them up a little bit, and you threw them in a bin where they tumbled around with aggregate and liquid to kind of wash them up a little bit. But most of the time I spent was on the lathe. But the problem with like computers and material science is like drill bits where? Knives where? So if you create a computer model of a physical object that's cutting another physical object, you have to factor in that the knife is deteriorating continuously. So in the computer, every so often you have to, you got to adjust the machine tooling by, 0.019 every now and then. So in real life, when you're dealing with pencils and compasses and rulers, and you're trying to create a pentagon or a pentagram, you're trying to create a perfect 5-point whatever. This is mathematical eternal perfection. But if you try to do it in the real world, it might actually be less perfect. Like, this is planar Euclidean mathematical perfection. The Richmond construction. This is planar Euclidean imperfection. However, because of human error, accumulated error, if you are to use these methods in the real world, not perfectly, I would say at least 65% of the time, this will give you a more accurate depiction than this. Occasionally in the real world, an inaccurate model will actually give you a more accurate depiction because there are less steps and less accumulated error. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. I've been struggling with this, man. I had a much better envisioning of how beautiful this video could be, and instead it turned up really, really ugly. But, like, even failures are beautiful. Like this. This was my first attempt on this. Got my pages. This was my first attempt. As you can see, I wrote fail. But it's still really beautiful. Isn't that kind of beautiful? Plus I got numbers. There's nothing better to make than numbers, motherfucker. Especially little ones. Oh yeah. Root 5 minus 1 over 2. That's a little number. And you'll never, ever, ever... Root 5 minus 1 over 2. A beautiful number. Try. And you'll never get your head around it. Unless you do, I hope you do. Hope.